coming. I hope this is enjoyable for everybody. We convey some good information to you all. Before I get started, I'll tell you a little bit about our company. We've been around about 30 years in terms of in the industry with under different names. We just about 2.5 years ago combined under the Edutrak software name. So as a corporation, about 2.5 years in, but this comes from a merger of Skyward, Edutrak, and several other products under kind of one umbrella. All of our stuff is in the K-12 space. So we do tuition, child care, extended care, facilitate payment processing, SSO integrations. Usually anytime that you have money collection, there's, well, who is it for? There's forms and data to be filled out. There's banking transactions that need to happen. There's information going to a finance system. So our products kind of cater to different departments. We don't just do the payment processing. We do full-on applications and solutions for these different departments, but it's all kind of connected together in our platform. Today, we're going to be going over an AI-powered solution that we've been working on for food service. It's essentially a self-checkout kiosk that kids can use to check themselves out instead of having to have a point-of-sale operator standing there kind of pointing and clicking and running a piece of point-of-sale software. Talk a little bit more about how it works, but essentially tray goes into position. There's a photo that gets taken of the actual tray. There's also a photo that gets taken of the student. The student can punch their code. You can use a barcode scanner. There's a number of ways that they can be scanned. It does facial recognition. You can figure out what's on the tray. So this is a prototype. We're in beta, doing a lot of AI training right now on it. But we'll talk more about how it works and what it's supposed to do. And it will interface with Skyward's API, so the transactions just go right into Skyward Lunch. Go ahead. Again, we think it's going to really kind of change how school lunch works, especially since there's such demand for data that doesn't exist right now, as well as there's such a demand for getting kids to do as quickly as possible. It also should help understanding how you're doing in terms of compliance over the course of time, and it just makes it a lot easier for staffing. So running a typical serving line, the person who's running the point of sale, they need to be kind of trained on how it works, how to pinch buttons, how to log in, a lot of this kind of stuff. And if they're not available, sick, you're understaffed, getting somebody in there to replace them, it's difficult and problematic. So let's go ahead and move forward. With the current model, kids go through a line. Essentially, they get through, they end up going to an operator. A human operator typically can run one serving line. Sometimes they run two, left, right, but there's a capacity that only one person is going to be able to do accurately. Because you really have to be looking at what's on the tray and bringing it up accurately. And when you're going back and forth, there's only so much you can do without ending up with a bottleneck. So traditional line, kids are coming through, you get the food, maybe hit a beverage or milk station, they end up at the point of sale. Again, one operator, one point of sale. We'll flip to the next slide. A lot of schools, they'll end up doing something like this, where it's still one operator, but they're dual line, so the kids will come on either side, and this causes kind of a lineup of kids. So if we get going, let's go to the next slide. Well, this is what's happening, right? We're getting a whole bunch of kids rushing through, grabbing their food, and then a big long line before they can get to their tables and eat, right? Another thing to keep in mind is audits of what's really happening with those compliance. And let's talk about compliance a little bit. NSLP requires food on a tray to hit a certain standard if it's going to be considered a reimbursable meal. So even if it's a paid meal, there's a subsidy from the NSLP. So the meal has to fit either 5 components: protein, grain, fruit, veggie, milk. That would be a serve scenario, or an offer versus serve is 3 out of the 5. So the kids have to pick 3 out of 5. So depending on what the school is registered to do, if the kid only selects 2 out of the 5 and they go through that line, that's not considered reimbursable. So it's if you get audited and they're seeing that, they're going to flag you. Ultimately, the kids have to meet the minimum requirements on their tray to be considered a reimbursable meal. So how do we really know how well we're doing over the course of time when we don't have any records? This is kind of a game changer in that regard. Again, there's 2 things happening, right, when we go through these lines. One of them is the kids are picking up their tray, their food, they're coming through, and the person is ringing them up, trying to ring them up accurately with what's on this tray. That's step 1. They're also doing the compliance check to make sure that the minimum requirements are met. And in a lot of cases, schools, because they're trying to go so fast, they're ringing up meal 1 or meal 2. So if your school has an entree A or B option, they're not really ringing up spaghetti versus sandwich, and they're certainly not going to that 3rd layer. You got the banana, the fruit, and this. There's generally a number of side options that can be selected from, as well as a la carte. It's generally on a meal not getting that granular because of speed. Nobody's got that much time to go entree, side. There's 3 side selections, and there's this milk, and there's the beverage, and they flip to this side and they go this one. It slows it down too much. So what they do is they ring up meal, lunch A or lunch B, or just lunch. Right? So there's a lot of data that just isn't there because they need to go fast. This changes all that. This thing can figure out exactly what's on the tray, what's being taken, a la carte items rung up accurately. So like I was saying, there's 2 processes happening. The operator is doing the ringing, but they're also doing the compliance check. And if we flip, in this scenario, larger programs where you've got several offerings, several entrees, high school, essentially you usually have more than 1 serving station, more than 1 entree. There's probably a salad station, a veggie station, multiple beverage stations. So the kids kind of float around, they go get what they want, they make their way through the serving line. Let's say we have 3 operators. Each operator max could do 2 rows at once. So you've got 6 rows, 3 operators, they're doing their compliance checks, but they can only go so fast. And they do go fairly fast, don't get me wrong. We've got schools pushing 420 kids through in 20 minutes, but there's still a bottleneck. There's always a bottleneck. So let's keep going. So what we're going for here, obviously, is how do we speed things up? How do we change the dynamic? And I don't know if you've ever read the book, 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. There's a little story in there about this young couple. The young lady was cooking a ham for Thanksgiving at her meal, and she cut the back inch off the ham before putting it in the tray to bake it, right? And I think her boyfriend said, "Why do you cut the back half of the inch of the ham off, right? I don't understand why you're doing that." So she just said, "Well, because that's what Mom always did, right?" So she asked Mom, why did you always cut the back half of the inch off the ham, right? So Mom said, "Well, I did that because Grandma always did that." And Grandma's there, and they asked Grandma, "Why did you do that?" And she says, "Oh, that's because our baking tray wasn't big enough to hold the whole thing, right?" So we get into, I guess my point is, we get into doing things a certain way because of limitations, right? There's a limitation how big your tray is so that you can bake your ham. There's a limitation of technology on how we process things going through now, because we have to have a human operator that's going to be ringing up things and checking compliance and doing things a certain way, because we're used to that and we haven't seen a new way to do it. Well, we're looking at changing that. So the big thing is, in our earliest iterations, the floating, what we call floating compliance, you're still gonna need a person, probably with the USDA's requirements, they're gonna want somebody there that's in charge of making sure the kids are taking their components. Because this thing is not gonna tell you at that moment. Later iterations may, but if there's an internet outage or a processing outage, they might not always. So how do we handle that? Let's just move on forward and let's look at it this way. So the kids are coming through, they're doing the same thing, they're getting their food, they're getting their milk station, and they're ringing themselves out, right? It doesn't mean you don't have somebody there watching them. In fact, this person that's doing the compliance, they can be behind this station, they can be the cooks that are serving, they can be floating around. You can have 2 or 3 or 4 stations. So the kids really, they can go through as fast as possible, and one person is managing the whole group, right? That person, they need to know, are you offer versus serve? They need to know what is required. That's it. They don't need to know how to touch a computer or point of sale or go really fast on ringing people up. And all they need to do is maintain that the kids are moving their way through, that they're actually ringing themselves up. So we've all seen this. If you've been to Walmart or any store that's got self-checkout now, there's generally 6 or 7, sometimes 10 self-checkout stations. There's always still one person there to help when something isn't working right or they have a question. So it's not like the oversight is going away. It's just becoming more efficient. And the same thing goes in these larger situations where you've got many different entree options, a la carte options, right? Your compliance people are still there. They're just not stuck ringing stuff. You can put as many stations as you want. Towards the end of the process, the kids can go through, they can take care of the business on their own. Another thing, and it can be avoided, I get the question all the time, facial recognition. It can be turned off completely. It can be opted out of. So if you want a certain kid's ID card or PIN code and you flag them as no facial recognition or no image, that can be done. But this thing can go straight facial recognition. After a week or 2, maybe even less, it will learn those kids' faces and it doesn't even need them to enter a PIN. So if you have any theft, we see that all the time, kids using the PIN of another kid, this thing will point it out. It's going to go, this doesn't seem like it's the right student, because it will run that analysis when it's doing its processing. Let's go ahead. Our point here is, instead of a big pileup of students, right, it's just quick. We want the kids to be eating as seamlessly as possible. And it's really the mission of the school to provide, education. We believe the best way to do that is good nutrition, seamless, stress-free process of just getting through to eat. It's just going to enhance the whole overall experience of education. So let's move forward. We did this little video just to kind of show you. It's really a marketing video, so it doesn't show you piles of kids, but we just didn't have a release on the photo, so I used my son. Really cool music too. As you can see, the kids go through, pick their food. There's somebody behind the counter that would be, hey, that's not enough carrots. You can't get away with just 1 carrot. You have to have a full portion. And that's what this thing is going to help report on as well. And you skip it, right? Go around. And again, you can use a pen pad. They can use a RFID. They can use a barcode. There's a lot of options that it will work with. In this case, I'm just showing the barcode. So, this is an example. So the way this works, it's a combination of human data processing and AI learning, right? So what do we have here? We have the picture of the tray. We have the picture of the face. We could zoom in on either one of them, but what we're looking for is what was served on that day. So this thing connects to your menu planning calendar, right? It doesn't need to know, let's say there's 1,000 burgers out in the world, right? We've got the Big Mac, we've got the Baconator. It doesn't need to know that because it's checking what's being served at that cafeteria on that day based on your menu calendar. So it's a very narrowed down list. What do we have? Veggie bar, romaine lettuce salad, assorted fruit choice. We've got homemade beef, turkey Italian club, or the vegetarian, and then our milk options. So the AI needs to figure out on that tray what's matching against this list. And this is kind of how it would work if it's a human is processing it. Bing, bing, bing. Student just recognized everything's good, status screen, go. We have, as part of the service, Human Data Processing Center that would be there to find new things that the AI is unfamiliar with. As soon as they get tagged manually, that training data updates the AI so that the AI can take it from there. So the whole idea is the school is totally hands-off. We don't need the school to sit there and try to take pictures of the food and tell the AI what it is, or really intervene. You know, if you change your menu at the last moment or whatever, this thing is we're gonna be able to figure it out. The human data processing is just there to kind of bring new things in, or in some cases, there could be a problem. Let's go to the next slide. Like the school, let's say the face is really blurry, there's a new kid and you're using facial recognition, there's tools to kind of match. Once they've been matched a few times, the AI then can use that data to proceed on forward. It's just like human learning. Let's keep going. This is kind of a split screen, so a school can, like if you want, let's say you want to manually process your own data, that's a possibility. But let's say there was some poorly blurry pictures, or the burger was sitting right on top of the carrot, or there's something about it where the AI, the AI gets to a threshold and its certainty is like 90%, 95%, but if its certainty falls below a certain threshold, then you can look at the actual images and process them manually. So that's what these screens kind of do. Let's keep going. I will go past that. Okay, so in terms of our first iteration, like I was saying, this is beta. We're really happy about where we're going with it. We're targeting elementary kids, elementary programs, and we want to get it to the point where it's going to be perfect for all a la carte. But our first iteration, we're really focused on those elementary schools where there's usually 1 to 2 offerings, entrees, maybe a third vegetarian, and the kids don't have a huge, robust kind of a la carte thing going on at the same time. A lot of programs which we see, either a homeroom teacher will bring their kids down, and really the homeroom teacher just kind of walk them right through. They're completely hands off. They're just making sure they're behaving and getting their food, so they don't have to touch anything. Or we see situations where the whole grade goes down at once, and they kind of come through, and you set 3 or 4 or 5 of these units up. And these, by the way, very light. This is not the typical stand. They can bolt on to a tray rail, or they can be in a rolling cart. You just roll it out, depending on what you want to do. They'll actually run on a cell phone charging battery for 8 to 9 hours. So it doesn't even need a power station. You can just turn it on, it connects to Wi-Fi, and it'll do its thing. What we're looking for, right? Better record keeping, right? First of all, we want to make the lines go faster. We want to get your data in, but then we want to have better record keeping. So we can give you a report on compliance. So let's say we ring up 400 meals. We can tell you, well, actually 380 of them were good. 20 of them probably don't meet their compliance requirement. Right now, we really have no idea. A school gets audited, what, once every 5 years or 3 years?
I think it's 5 depending on the state.
Right, so an auditor comes through, they're literally looking over your shoulder to make sure watching the meal components that they're meeting requirements. They're there once every 3 to 5 years for a week or less. Obviously, everybody's going to be on their best behavior when there's an auditor just standing there watching them. But like, what are they really doing the rest of the time? You can hope they're doing their best, but when you're a food service director and you have 6 different schools and different cafeterias and you're relying on all these employees at these different places, you don't really have any idea how well they're doing. You can guess, but we're going to be able to show you exactly how they're doing. We're going to be able to show you the data so that you can improve on that data. If there's a certain student that's continually not taking their carrot enough, say, hey, Jimmy, you need to start taking your carrots, otherwise your meals, you're going to have to start paying for them. Versus, maybe that's not the right conversation, but, or the operator, hey, you've got 5 of your kids, half of them are coming through, they're not taking their vegetables. You need to do something about that. We don't have that data right now. This brings us that data. It also gives more time for the kids to enjoy their meal. Let's flip to the next slide. Again, I don't want to harp on this too much, but in this case, Fast Track is doing the registry. The compliance people are still there. They're just open to doing other things and doing things more efficiently. Let's keep going. In this situation, you had basically 3 operators before. You can almost knock it down to 1. Not that these people won't have jobs, but there's so many other things to do, and it's really hard to find the resources these days, at least what we're seeing out there. Let's keep going. Let's flip past this. Daily reporting again on how you're doing. Identify under selected food items. Improving accountability. We talked about that with staff, and help schools intervene when the consistency isn't quite where it needs to be. I think we can also get into the next slide. There's a little bit on allergy. Parents are going to have, if you give them the option, the ability to see what the kids ate that day. They'll see the picture, they can log in and see their own child, see that they got the meal. And I've had a lot of food service directors go, oh, that's great. Because sometimes the kids will complain and like send the parent a picture and they'll make it look really bad, like it's really small and they didn't get hardly anything, when it doesn't, like, in reality, show the full tray. Well, now there's not going to be any confusion. The parent can see what the kids have had. Also, if you've had a child with allergies or reactions, sometimes backtracking what they ate. Sometimes new things pop up. Now we know exactly. If there's an item that was contaminated, and this happens, a lot of, spinach might have had salmonella reported. We can track exactly who had the spinach. We would be able to literally see it, and what lot and what kids ate it that day. I mean, boom. So we're really trying to increase the availability of data that's never been around before, and there may be things that we're even missing that we're going to find out as this continues to grow. In our state, there was a number of programs that actually were exploited and reported huge numbers of reimbursables that ended up being fraud, millions of dollars. And this went mostly to childcare programs and summer feeding programs, but with a product like this, there's absolutely zero question whether the meal was served or not. We literally have a picture of it. So from an auditing standpoint, I don't know if any of you are familiar with AccuClaim reports. This is a report to kind of verify if your servings and claims are matching what your daily attendance and ratios of free to reduced are. This is a solid, hey, I can prove exactly what those kids ate each and every day.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
So for kids, I mean, this is the reality. I hate to say it, but some kids forget their barcodes, some kids can't remember their PIN. So does that like slow a line down, or like if they have facial recognition, would that do it every time they come through the
Yeah, the facial recognition would allow them to just not to bypass the PIN. You wouldn't necessarily need it at all. If they enter their PIN 3 times wrong, it will actually just take the transaction and say thank you, because it's already programmed so that we'll figure out who it is. And the thing about this that differs from like a gas station or a Walmart, you're dealing with, at those locations, somebody you might never see ever again, and you need to get paid, and it needs to be accurate for what you're selling at that moment, right? Where this is different. This is school lunch program. NSLP is driven on actual prepaid balances. Many states are moving to free for all, and we know who the customer is, and we can adjust the balance and adjust the transaction. It doesn't have to happen again, going back to the ham. It doesn't have to happen at that moment. It can happen 10 minutes later. It depends on how fast the AI is going to process the data, but by the time the kids get home, their balances will be set. Everything will be correct. So it's like it's more important to get the kids fed than it is to kind of slow everything down, because we can get the data accurate after the need.
Okay, so then I'm a kid, I'm in elementary school, and now I'm going to middle school. Everything stays the same, as my photo's still in there, if I used to live in a database or a bank, where now I went from elementary, I'm gonna be in the 6th grade.
That's a great question. So we don't store biometric. The term is, I guess it all depends on how you consider it. Really, we're just taking photos and comparing them to other photos. So as the kid grows, or maybe grows a beard, they're changed. They're continually changing, right? And the AI is going to be doing comparisons off the most recent ones. So I mean, you can dump all that data, and then it would have nothing to go off of, but it will evolve with it. The only trick is when it's a brand new student and we don't have anything. So it's a brand new student, maybe we have a student photo to go off of. Maybe the first few times they have to punch a code, or somebody on the back side has to punch their code. So let's say you process 400 lunches. There's 2 new kids. Well, those transactions are stuck because we don't know who they're for. So somebody can log in and go, oh, that's this new kid. Boom. You select who they are, and then the AI has something to go off of as it moves forward. Where are we? Let's move on. Let's talk a little bit just reminding you, we do fee management, processing. I don't know. I'd love to get any of you interested in looking at some of our other products. Athletic registration, payments, ticketing. If you've got lunch balances in Skyward and you're looking to take a payment, we can do that. If you've got fees in Skyward and you're looking to pay them off, one of our claims to fame, I guess, is business office loves us, because no matter where you've got money coming in on the campus, cash, check, credit card, all these different areas and programs, it gets all kind of put together under one system, and that we can send to the finance department. So if there's any additional questions, I'd love to hear them. This is pretty simple. Again, it's not set up for being on this piece of plastic here, but the kids just put the thing in position and punch their code. And I just punched an erroneous code. Again, it's going to try to learn who it is. So if the kid punches the wrong code, if it can determine who they are, it will fix that. It doesn't really make much of a difference. But there's settings. You can turn the facial thing completely off and force everybody to have a PIN code or a card. And if a parent wants to opt out, so they don't want their child's face taken, you have to use some type of ID. Because there's no way for us to know until that ID is submitted to not take a picture.
Do you use standard trays, or do you have to buy specific sections of trays?
No, this is a good question. there's a black tray mode and there's a color tray mode. So you can't use them both. You gotta use all black or all colored. And the reason why our sensors are basically proximity detectors, and they use infrared, and black absorbs all the color. So it's like it can't see. So we have to go in the reverse. It's a long story. However, our later renditions, it won't make any difference because we're going to dump the sensors. There will be a kind of a marker here where this downward camera, it's looking for that marker, and as soon as it's obstructed, boom. So the technology is really kind of evolving quickly. We're training at schools right now. In fact, if any of you are interested in signing up for beta, early adopter, we've got a QR code for you to jump on there and give it we'll set you up and be happy to help us develop this to its fruition. We're looking at hopefully having a product that's ready to be sold early next year. But beta is a whole different story. We can get units in right away. I would not switch an entire school over, but you can pick a certain site. And that's another thing about this product. It's not all or nothing. You can pick certain cafeterias and say, this is great for that cafeteria, I'm low staff, we want one of those units there. And have all your other cafeterias working as normal. You could have maybe this go in and say, if you're just doing meals, you go through there. If you're doing a la carte, we want to ring you up manually over here. It's like, it doesn't matter, it can work either way. Did I miss anything?
No, I think you did great.
You said that it compares the items on the tray based on the lunch calendar. If they pivot and don't use the lunch calendar for the day, which happens usually after like a snow day, does somebody in the system have to do something to adjust for that?
Well, the worst case scenario is there's transactions that get stuck because it couldn't figure out what they were. It doesn't mean they're lost. It just means that it might be until somebody adds that calendar in that they get processed. But it's getting to be so good that most schools, they rerun the same items every few weeks. They're not doing a totally unique thing every day, and it's getting to be so good that it won't really matter. If you think about it, a lot of the stuff that we sell, it's the same stuff. Fruit, corn, carrots, broccoli. Like a lot of these basic stuff, they're all the same everywhere. You get into some of the entree things like pizza, it's very identifiable. Certain sandwiches, if you have 3 different types of sandwiches and they're on the same exact bun, that's where things can get a little tricky. And it also, if you're going to rely on AI, the trick would be, well, don't serve 3 exactly the same looking sandwiches on the same day. Move them to different days, and then you can get away with something like that and kind of really know. Another one the other day, we had, I don't know if you can go back to that image, or switch to the manual processing screen. It's on your other tab. So this right here, they had a homemade lasagna with beef and a homemade vegetarian. The only difference was this, you can see it on the top. They look almost exactly the same. The AI can tell the difference. Now, is it going to be 100% perfect? No. It will make mistakes, just like humans do. When you have a human being, and you've probably seen this, kids are coming from both sides, and they're going like this, and they're going like this, and they're going like this. I mean, I've seen many people do amazing things, have no idea how they do that, but I don't think most of us can do that and be accurate.
So has this been in use in schools for a bit, or is it still? I'm just wondering what parents, have you had reactions from parents about their children's pictures being taken? Cause there's always that component, it seems like.
Oh yeah, there's always a group of people that don't like it, but they can opt out.
So now that would be, you said an ID, so basically they would just scan their student ID.
So if their ID is, let's say 1002, well, the system will be told if 1002 is rung up, then kill the photo, don't use the photo. You know, I mean, theoretically, you want to cater to the parents and keep them happy, but it's considered directory data, so
Yeah,
it's
well, you don't need to convince me.
okay. So it's like, yeah, we do get that, but I think for the most part, parents, once this is like in full production, they're gonna like to see. You know, let's go ahead and click on this. They can see what their kid was wearing, that they showed up. You know, there might be a situation too where we can run a report. Who was attending that day and didn't make it through the line? Why? You know, if your policy is, even if you're brown bagging it, to go through the system, because a lot of times packed lunch they'll still get a milk. But what if you just say, hey, it's a check-in point. We want to make sure that you are here. So even if you're bringing a packed lunch, this thing will know it's a packed lunch. And if it's a milk, it will ring it up as milk only. So that's an a la carte item. So I don't know. There's a lot of opportunity there. Any other questions? All right.
Right.
Did we end early?
Yes.
How did I do?
Good.
All right. As long as we're here, why don't you log into our, just give you a little overview on our payment solutions. This is essentially what we call our dashboard. You scroll down, every student gets what we call a card. Within the card, all their balances from different departments. So this is food service balance, this is a tuition agreement, some upcoming payments, some contract invoices, extended care bills, and then other fees. Like this section right here would populate from Skyward. So if you assign a kid a fee, it's going to be showing up just like this, and they can either pay it, or I don't know if does Skyward support forms? So go ahead and click sign form. So if you needed to collect information along with the fee payments, this might be broken.
Let me take that.
It might be, I haven't used this demo account in God knows forever.
Yeah, that form might be just not loaded. Let's try typing.
So I mean, if you collect forms in Skyward, you wouldn't need to put a form request on it. But if you wanted to collect the information right at the point of payment, you can do that as well.
Yeah, I think it's just running slow.
Okay.
So do you guys, would that interact with, like, we use Destiny for our library software?
Does, yeah.
How did that bring fees over?
Yeah, so Destiny has its own API that it would also show up in here.
You can also do Family Max,
Thank you.
variable priced item, pay for a $0 item, like say if you're just a field trip and you wanna collect, just the form data for that field trip. Are they taking a packed lunch? Are they ordering lunch from, you can have the parents go on, fill out a form, you can collect that data and export it in CSV, so.
And is your product, this is separate from this, kind of like if I'm a member of the community, I wanna go see a play, this can process electronic payments?
Yes, we
into
have.
a different module or something, I imagine.
I'll
Yeah.
run over that.
every one of these is like its own module. Maybe that's strong, maybe it's timed out. It's off my phone right now, so it's,
Okay, I'll just,
but it's, we have a module called eStore,
There we go.
and it's essentially e-commerce for schools. It ties into all of your school data, so the parents, if you want to purchase tied to a student, it would be able to let you do that, but also it serves community, so you don't have to have any students. And you can just make purchases, buy tickets, spirit wear, you don't have to be registered.
we're all over the board for how we get our payments for random stuff, which is why I'm asking.
Yeah. And that's the nice thing about it. All of these products, all of the back end financials are gonna tie into the same tool. It's been a pleasure. I hope,
Yeah, come see us at our booth.
yeah,
We have an iPad giveaway, so stop on by and register.
I'll love some free iPads.
this thing must have gotten dropped or something.
Because it is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
When do you think you'll be out of beta, or guessing?